Hello, beauties, and welcome back to Aesthetic Chat with Kiki. I am your host, Kiana Gamble, and this is your next episode. This is episode 6 of season 2. I have Traci Andreason on with us today. She is based out in Utah. Amazing advice. So let's just get right into it. Enjoy, beauties. Welcome to Aesthetic Chat with Kiki, Traci. I want to start out by just talking about your story, your journey into aesthetics, and kind of how you transition from maybe traditional healthcare into aesthetics.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I love what you're doing and helping other injectors, find mentorship through your podcast. So my entry into aesthetics was through a plastic surgeon. I had experience working in a cancer hospital surgical unit, and that is how I transitioned into the OR, working for a plastic surgeon. I was doing his pre-op, post-op, and OR, and he was so gracious to offer to train me to become an injector. So I started injecting at his clinic and just grew from there.
Awesome. What year was that?
That was 2016.
Okay. And then how long did you end up working for the plastic surgeon and then kind of transitioning into more like that med spa role?
So I worked there for about 3 years and I loved it. I loved having the plastic surgeon there. I loved still working in the OR because it was so great for anatomy and figuring out when it's time to refer a patient out. I definitely wanted more of just an injector role and transitioned out at that point, started at Ruma Aesthetics. And then I worked at Ruma Aesthetics for a couple of years and just recently started my own practice.
Very cool. I do kind of want to touch a little bit on kind of that transition. So it's now been at 2 different places injecting. Now you're going to kind of start your own business. Can you kind of walk through, the mental journey and kind of maybe some of that kind of deciding, okay, is it time for me to move on and do something else?
That's a great question. So I think for me, a lot of it had to do with feeling unsettled in what I wanted to achieve for myself personally and also for my patients. I'll be doing things a little bit differently than a traditional med spa. I'm very passionate about fitness, nutrition, wellness, very root cause approach to a lot of things, including aesthetic needs like, acne or facial aging. And so tying in the components of wellness and human longevity have always been a passion of mine. And I just hadn't found a way to kind of forge that path without starting my own. It's definitely a hard decision though, because I love having a lot of colleagues. I love being surrounded by like-minded people, and a lot of support and camaraderie comes with working in as part of a team. So I'm looking forward to building that back up and having one of my own. But other than that, I think the biggest push was just feeling unsettled and like I wasn't doing my life's work. I just knew that there was more for me and it was time to start my own.
Well, that's amazing. I love that you're trying to take in kind of more of a holistic, a wellness approach. Definitely, I'm sure a little bit scary. I mean, you have young kids and you were very well established. You had your clientele. I bet that was a little bit of a scary leap for you.
Yes. You know what? I was not nervous about the business side of it, the sacrifice. I knew what I was getting myself into. I've watched several people grow businesses and I have colleagues who have done the same. And I knew that I had a lot of loyal clients who have followed me from, my first month injecting. But more of the fear came from what you said, I have a young family, and the time sacrifice and the financial sacrifice of starting a business is not something that I'm unaware of. And so it took a lot of debate on if this was the right time and if it was worth it. But what's come out of it is fabulous. I have set boundaries really early on to make sure that I don't sacrifice time with my children, that I can still clock out and be a mom and be a good wife. I think it's important. And I'm so grateful to have learned from watching, other awesome business owners find that they need to set boundaries later on. And I'm grateful that I have been able to learn that and try that from the start, because that's honestly was the biggest fear, was losing out on time, right? Especially with finishing NP school. I just wanted to kind of chill out, spend more time at home, have a little bit of time to just chill. But that is apparently not in my cards. So
So funny. I feel like maybe it's in some of our personalities not to know really how to chill
Yeah.
because, like you're like,
Yeah.
oh, finally, once I hit this one milestone, I'll be able to finally just, relax. And then
Yeah.
you end up jumping right into something else, which is honestly
Yeah.
really, really cool. It sounds like so far that the transition to kind of to working on your own thing has been really, really great. Would you say that you're learning a lot from other mentors and kind of learning from their mistakes, hopefully?
Yes, and I think that's like part of your journey, anywhere you work, even having worked in the hospital and done newborn ICU and have worked in the surgery center, you just take something from everywhere you go as far as knowledge and experience, so that you can be better and do better. And I feel so grateful that I worked among some really amazing people in both places. And I definitely wouldn't be where I'm at without having guidance, even from places I've been before. And I feel so fortunate to have a lot of friends and colleagues who have been super supportive. The second they found out, I had an overwhelming response of support from people who were just willing to help me with the transition, knowing what I was about to take on, so very grateful for that.
So, you coming from, having clinic experiences from other places, being around a bunch of people, other colleagues to really bounce ideas off, learn from, would you say that the transition to owning a practice was a little bit easier compared to, I'm really kind of trying to target those ones that are trying to open up their own thing right away and they haven't mastered the injection side of it. Like, would you 100% recommend, finding a mentor? Don't go out on your own starting out if possible.
For sure, 100%. And I serve as a mentor for a lot of women and practitioners who have done that, and it is a resounding response that they wish they had more colleagues, or they wish they had somebody who they could learn from.
For someone, maybe they're not brand new, maybe they're within that first 1 to 2 years of in the industry, maybe they're doing it on their own, maybe they're in a practice. Where do you recommend they continue to grow their skill set? Like, how do you recommend they find good trainings or good mentors or things to really, perfect their craft?
And I think it's kind of difficult to answer because there's so many different avenues to get trained. I think finding a mentor is great, even if it's someone in your area or it's someone through social media, someone that you can reach out to on a consistent basis if you don't have colleagues in your space. Like, you have to have somebody, that has more experience than you, that's willing to help you keep your patients safe. But as far as trainings go, I like to be on Patreon. There are a couple of really great injectors on there, Erica Berry and Julie Kaplan. I love following along on those Patreons because it's constant education and you're not having to seek out opportunities. But there's also great opportunities, going to conferences, you can meet different, leaders who have experience and are willing to do personal private trainings outside of what's available through, on-label product trainings.
Great advice. Do you feel like waiting at least 1 to 2 years of being in the industry before kind of jumping into maybe one of those conferences is the best? Just because from my personal perspective, I did go to a conference kind of within my first year of injecting, and it is very, very overwhelming.
There's this sweet spot. I think the first year it is too overwhelming. When you're not familiar with a subject, it is difficult to know what you want to retain. It's difficult to hold an opinion because those conferences are not always the most science backed, in my opinion. A lot of talks are about what people are using in their practice based on their anecdotal patient experiences, right? So you might have one speaker come up and say something, and the next speaker directly opposes that. It's difficult to gain knowledge when you feel really insecure in your own practice, right? I know that some people walk away more confused, but I also think that depending on the conference, depends on the type of knowledge you can gain. We have conferences that I have been to that I felt were a little bit too fundamental, that I didn't feel like I was gaining a lot of knowledge from the classes. So I think there should be a lot of thought going into selecting those conferences, looking through the agenda, what kind of information is going to be shared so that you can spend your money wisely. I find that my training budget, what I like to use my money on now is less conferences, more private trainings with people who are running killer businesses or yielding amazing results, safe results, ethical practice, getting those people to be able to suck their brains for a minute is definitely really valuable to me.
That's actually really great advice. I think that more and more injectors, once you kind of are within, you're kind of past that 3-4 year mark, it definitely sounds like that's kind of where they go to, is like private trainings, very specialized trainings. My question for you is, what was the best training that you have ever attended?
Cadaver labs. My favorite one so far has been with injection anatomy with Dr. Chris Zurich. I think an anatomy cadaver lab is crucial to any injector's, training.
How many cadaver labs have you taken? Have you taken a handful, or was Chris Zurich's one of kind of your first ones?
I've done 3. I can't remember what the second one. Oh, no, it was Chris Zurich. I did his before as well. And then the one before that was actually with the medical school anatomy lab here in Utah.
Very cool. There's a common misconception about aesthetics being really, really fun. And I don't know, people forget that it is medicine. And I think it's really easy to look on social media and be like, an injector's life is so glamorous. Like, they work maybe 2 hours a day.
And then you've got a Gucci bag. Yeah.
All this money. Yeah. And so I would love for you to kind of touch on kind of the uglier sides of the industry that maybe we all don't talk about, but maybe, it's kind of an underlying presence, and then ways that we can kind of combat that.
Yes. Well, so I would love to combat that. It's been my biggest grievance with our industry is that, I think money does weird things to people. I think we all know that. It can be a lucrative industry. I don't think it always is, but it can be. And it can be very sales oriented, starting from the very top to even retail sales, right? So I don't know what really causes our industry to be kind of greedy, but I think that's one of the big issues. The other issue, though, is how wrapped up we are in social media. It is kind of wild. Part of the reason I also don't choose to go to every conference that's available to me, because it feels a lot like a popularity contest, or like who knows who and who got invited to the after party and who's wearing the nicest shoes, who's got the coolest dress on. Those things are not important to me, especially not in my career and my practice, definitely not in my relationships with my colleagues, right? Because I think there are a lot of people who don't even have social media. I mean, we know there are a lot of incredible injectors who don't have social media, who've been practicing longer than anybody else in the conference. And to not see them as valuable is strange to me. It's strange to me that we're ranking people as best and top and, all these different signature treatments based on what? Who's voting? Who's
Instagram
voting,
following.
and what kind of, we have no regulation.
Yes.
So there is nothing saying somebody has, a certain degree of knowledge over anybody else other than what has been purported and shared. And so if you're not someone who's an oversharer, you're not someone who's self-promoting, you're not someone who's trying to grow your Instagram, then I guess you're just not great. So it blows my mind a little bit how wrapped up we get in that. And it's really sad, because I think speaking to probably a lot of who are going to be listening to this would be newer injectors, that it feels like that's important. It feels like that's what you need to strive for. It's like, who am I bumping elbows with? How many followers do I have? Did I go to the event? Did I get a picture with this person who is social media famous, right? It's, instead of spending our time and energy on staying innovative, staying safe, staying collaborative, building a community of awesome leaders who can share knowledge, which we have plenty of those. I'm not saying it's industry wide. It's just, I think you could probably agree that you have to make a conscious effort to step out of that. It's a very natural place to land in our industry, is in this social media popularity, clicky world.
I 100% agree with all of the things you were saying. I like that you also kind of touched on this, because my last episode with George Baxter Holder, he does touch on this too. He says just because you have a bunch of followers does not mean you're a great injector. Just recorded with Marty Raymond, and Marty Raymond doesn't even have social media, but she's been doing injectables since, the 90s. So like, and she's amazing, and she does all of these different trainings with all these different things. Like she's been around the sun the same amount of time that, you know,
Yes.
Connie Brennan has been in it. But like people just don't really know her name as well because she's not all up on social media.
Whatever it is that we're ranking these professionals on that we're excluding, these OGs, the people that we have the most to learn from, you know, and we're so focused on getting the plaque for top 100 injector, or we're so focused on, you know, making it in our local magazine that we are like losing it. Those are the people I want to learn from. Those are the people that have seen the most and have touched the most faces and have gone through the trends. You know, they saw threads when they first came out the last time, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's the whole point is, yeah, like social media isn't everything. And I think most people, even George Baxter said this, like if people put as much energy into their social media as they did to become great, like this industry would be 1,000 times better because everyone's like working on themselves and working on their craft and working on bettering science.
I totally agree. Like positive patient outcomes. I don't know, like you said, this is still medicine. And while we can't deny that it is a different type of medicine. We have we're all cash pay. We have a lot of sales. We have a lot of, you know, things going into it that make us different. But at the end of the day, there are real risks, real adverse events happening. These are patients' faces. And yeah, we're spending our time trying to get Insta famous rather than staying educated and becoming great. Like George said, it's just wild to me. And part of, like you said, we want to combat that. Part of what I'm doing, I started a nonprofit, it's the Utah Injectors Association, and hoping to scale nationally, but currently growing it in Utah. And the whole entire purpose is to collaborate with the injectors in the area, connect people that, you know, don't typically have the ability to connect because they're not big on social media, right? And to promote innovation and education, making it accessible and you know, especially new injectors, having a place where they can find where's the next conference, where's the next training, what's important, what's the new product coming out, what do we all think about it, what's the experience, what are some patient events, case studies that we've had recently that we can all learn from, right? Like that came to be because I was tired of seeing that the motivations in the industry are weird. They're not medicine.
I love that. I'm like, maybe I need to like zoom in or fly to Utah for these.
Or get one going in your state.
Yes, for sure. No, I love that. I think that I 100% agree with everything that you're saying. So I want to ask you, so you're obviously doing this nonprofit, you're trying to promote community over competition, you're trying to just talk medicine, which is the whole point of what we're doing, right? Like medical procedures, being safe with things, all of that kind of stuff. But I want to talk to you about, you know, you do a lot of things for kind of the newer injector side. So I do want to give you a moment to kind of talk about, for those brand new injectors, what do you tell them when they DM you? Like, where do I start? What do I do? Do I buy kind of your guide? Like, kind of give me like your little spiel. So then as you're getting your practice up and running, you don't have the time to, you know, continue to message kind of the same thing. You can just drop them a link to this podcast.
Oh, yes. Thank you. That is great. So my training injectors guide business is really geared toward beginner injectors because I felt like because there aren't regulations that a lot of people are led astray and not, you know, they spend a couple $1,000s on a weekend course and still feel like, wait, I'm not ready to do anything. So I wanted to shake that up a bit and change things the way that I could. So I made a beginner virtual course that covers what is typically covered in a beginner course, which is talks, lips, and cheeks. But it goes through anatomy, adverse event management. There's video demos. It's hours and hours of education that is self-paced. And at the end, they'll have a certificate in order to train with myself or other trainers that I have on board that are in connection with that course. And they don't get hands-on until they feel comfortable, because what happens for these new injectors, they go to these courses, which I held the same kind of course, a weekend course. They can't retain anything because everything is so new. And then you're asking them to poke somebody in the face. They've never done that before. You know, it's just a lot. It's overwhelming and nobody's going to feel confident to go apply for a job and show their skills with that. And I think it's really sad. A couple $1,000s is a lot when you're new starting out as an injector. And it's sad that a lot of it gets kind of wasted on a course that they don't gain a lot of value from. So the self-paced virtual course came out for that reason. That is where I direct people first, especially because, and I'm sure you can relate to this, I know injectors who did a weekend course and decided they didn't want to do injectables. They're like, oh, hell no. I thought it was all glitz and glam.
Yes.
And no, I do not want to do this. So it's a good entry point. The price point is a lot lower because it doesn't include the hands-on yet. Then they can opt to do, okay, I actually do want to do this, but I'm only going to train on Botox. That's all I want to offer, or I don't want to train on fillers yet. So it puts a little bit in their independence in deciding what they want from their education as far as injectables go and where they want to go with it, leaving with enough knowledge to know what to be nervous about and what they should be focused on. And then the other thing I recommend, I have authored a couple manuals that help, grow your clientele or getting started, how to find a job, how to build your resume. I have a little manual that's meant to be very succinct to use in practice. So you can look up dilutions, look up product choice, look up, techniques in this small manual. So you're not sifting through a textbook. And those all go hand in hand. Definitely my top seller is Color Me Injected. It's a coloring book made for learning facial anatomy. And so that's great for all injectors. It's great when you don't have an anatomy lab coming up, you need a refresher. So that is where I lead people. Start there, start at Injector's Guide. It's a really good place to pivot off of, and then they can train with whoever they want,
I will start sending people your way and to your guides just because I do know a handful of people that have said amazing things about all of your resources. People are worried about the cost, and 100% the weekend courses are a lot more expensive. But, buying textbooks, buying self-starter guides, doing a lot of your own research, doing a lot of self-study, that stuff isn't very expensive. You can find PDFs here and there, a lot of self-study. And I do think definitely doing like a virtual course first after you do some self-study, you'll be ahead of the game in terms of trying to do some hands-on stuff. I don't think someone should just go and do a hands-on course to think, oh, do you think I'll like it? Like I've been in enough classes with new classes where people are just scary. Like when they're just starting to throw needles and things and they don't know any of the muscles, and it's worrisome for me. So I'm like, please don't do that. Like, please take the time to learn, just because when I was new too, like I did all the background work. So when I got to the classes, I felt like it was like solidifying everything.
Yes. And our poor models in these beginner courses, like, can we not subject these innocent people looking for a discount to someone who never heard of a corrugator before they showed up?
Yeah. Yeah. It's too much. So I will definitely start sending them towards all of your resources that you've created. I do not know how you even managed to have the time to do all of that and do nurse practitioner school and all the things, but you sound like a superwoman.
Oh my gosh. I always tell people necessity breeds invention, right?
Yes.
If you put 17 balls on the air, you'll work to catch them all.
Love it. We'll figure it out. So I do kind of want to transition into just chatting about PRP. I know I saw something on your story because I know the big thing right now is like going into like the EZ-GEL or like using PRP, mixing it with other things and making it more like a natural filler substance. So I want you to kind of chat about the benefits of PRP and utilizing PRP in a practice.
Awesome. Well, I love PRP, PRF, and EZ-GEL. I love them. It's also great that it ties into the aesthetic component of a practice because your estheticians can use it, with microneedling and, going in and injecting under the eyes with PRF or PRP and having them a really great addition to boost results, boost healing. As far as the advancements, it's really fun coming into advancements in this regenerative med sector, right? Like how cool this whole EZ-GEL system. So that's something I've been excited to bring on in my own practice. I've only been using it for a couple of weeks now, and I have been loving it. I have colleagues who've been using it and loving it. And what I love about it is that I think we're a lot of stuff is coming out with fillers not being the end all be all because we're having long-term issues, and maybe not even long-term issues, but it's lasting in the tissue a lot longer than we thought. And, maybe
or it's like migrating elsewhere, becoming superficial, or
Yes, yes, and that we have to be a little more patient sometimes and rely on the body to do some of its own processes to get really natural looking results. And I'm all about that. I'm also all about limiting, like I said, trauma, limiting downtime, limiting complications. So that's one thing I really love about it. It's definitely not and this EZ-GEL PRF PRP is not replacing filler, but it's definitely stepping in and adding to the treatment plan. And in some places, being able to be used as an alternative, at least for a short time, or, for patients who don't care about hollowing under the eyes, but it's the pigment and the texture that's the issue, right? And we have patients who just aren't candidates for filler under the eyes, but they're not candidates for surgery. It's just nice to have other modalities available to us. So I use it, it's the biogel. It yields so much, 4 to 5 milliliters, that I'm able to use it in multiple areas of the face, which I love. We do the hair loss with the PRF. We do the O shot. So we use it in our women's health stuff. We use it in our aesthetic side with microneedling. It's just all over in the practice. So I'm a huge fan.
So I don't have I've actually never used like the EZ-GEL. I've only heard lots about it. Can you place it in the same plane that you're placing PRP superficially? Or do you go down and mimic, like, I don't know, like bolusing on bone or?
So that's a great question. I use it in all the planes. It's just volume dependent. I'm not going to put a lot in the superficial plane. It's very forgiving. You can massage it in. So I start deep and course the planes. I like to aim for the deep fat pads, just like I would with a filler. And, deep on bone is great. And then I traverse up because I want the tissue to be affected. I want to be up in the lymphatic area, to help rejuvenate the tissue. So all over, it's just how much volume you're placing. I just place very, very little in the superficial plane and doing more of the larger boluses down deep.
So with PRP, with some of these more natural, getting your body to work for you, producing collagen and things, there's definitely like a lull period, and patients have to be patient. With the EZ-GEL, are you seeing that same delayed kind of response? Is it still, kind of 3 to 6 months post your last series? Do you still need to do a series with the EZ-GEL?
So I haven't had it long enough to have patients back, really. I just have a couple weeks. Based on the colleagues that I've talked to, and so far what I'm seeing in my patients is that it's similar to PRF in tissue rejuvenation, that you have to wait for that. But the great thing about it is that the gel, is retained for 2 to 6 months. What I think is reasonable with the first treatment is in that closer to that 2-month mark, 2 to 3 months, that you're going to see still that a little bit of volume correction. So that's really nice, because by the time your volume correction is down, you're getting the benefits of that, of the growth factors, right? So it's really nice because it takes away that chat with your patient about, okay, so we're placing it in a couple of weeks. It's going to look like nothing happened. It's like, no, that's not going to happen.
Right.
You're going to have correction. It's a whole process. And what I'm seeing is that it's definitely a multiple treatment series, 2 to 3, I would say, in the first year. But I'm still new enough to it that I can't speak to own personal experience. But that's what I'm hearing, retreat at about 8 weeks. At some practices, that's when they're introducing a little bit of filler or even blended filler with the EZ-GEL. So it's exciting, kind of new to put some protocols in place regarding that treatment. But I think it's really cool. EZ-GEL kind of covers the gap for that, of the whole, it's a delayed response thing.
Yeah, that's super cool. So one of my last questions for you is, tell me what your favorite procedure to perform is.
That is always so hard. How do you pick? I love doing lip filler. I would say that's probably my favorite thing to perform. I do love my women's health procedures though as well. They're super rewarding. But as far as like actually performing the treatment, enjoying myself while I'm doing it, lips just bring out both sides of your brain so much, and every lip is so different that it's fun for me. It's like relaxing. So it's definitely a little bit more what I'm known for. So I luckily do a lot of it. But yeah, I would say that's my favorite.
Very cool. Every lip is a challenge, which is always fun. Well, thank you for taking the time to come on today. I think that you dropped a lot of great pearls and great advice to all those that are listening out there. I want you to let people know where they can find you, where they can find your upcoming practice, where they can find the guides and all of the resources.
Oh, thanks. So I'm on Instagram, Traci Andreason _NP. My practice name is Rise Rejuvenation Center. We have an Instagram and a website named just that, Rise Rejuvenation Center. The educational material is injectorsguide.com. There's also an IG for that, of course. There's an Instagram for everything. But that's the best place to start if you're looking for educational stuff. If you want to come into the practice and shadow and train, I'm open to that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Traci. It was so fun chatting with you.
You too. I think you're doing awesome things for the industry, and I appreciate your added light and education.
All right, beauties, and that was a wrap on the latest episode of Aesthetic Chat with Kiki. So happy that you guys are still tuning into these episodes. Please reach out if you have any specific speakers you want me to reach out to and chat with, or any questions for specific speakers that you would love for me to ask. If you still are not following the podcast Instagram, that is at aesthetic.chatwithkiki. My aesthetic Instagram is at aestheticnurse.kiki. Website is aestheticnursekiki.com. That's where you can, find the podcast. You can find some fun Hello Beauties apparel, so check all of that out. Until next time, beauties. Bye.